Right beside that bone. The Caveman steaks or yellow, so they kind of stand out. And then this was the front shoulder, so that come off the shoulder blade. All right, everybody, welcome back. I'm Brian. This is MistyDawnFarm. Amy is busy today, so I'm going to do my best to video this. Hopefully it's good enough that she'll post it. So we're going to get ready and process this goat that we had butchered about 14 days ago. Had things come up, various reasons why we couldn't get to it. So we're in what we call our freezer room. It's our butcher room, kind of stuff everywhere. I did have the window unit trying to cool it off in here a little bit. It is Florida, even though it's winter time. The high was 67 today, so it's a little bit warmer than here than it is outside. It's currently 60. Well, I guess it's cooled off a little bit in here. So it's about 60 degrees now since I had the AC unit running. Turn you around and show you what we're working with. So this was the goat that we had put in. Just kept ice on it. Every day, if it melted, we would drain the water off on the plug on the side. Just make sure we kept it as cold as possible. So don't want to leave it much more than about 10 to 14 days. Most people do it between 7 to 10. So I'm gonna have to wear gloves and have stuff all over my hands. So I'm gonna set this up in one place, and so you can see what I'm doing. I'll explain a little bit as I go. Hopefully that's straight enough. So let's get started. Before we get started, two things I'm gonna be using today is a boning knife, and I'll be using a fillet knife to help get some of the fat off and stuff, especially when I'm trimming like the loin and stuff like that. But just wanted to show you this stuff. Most butchers are going to use some type of knife like this. There's one that's a little bit stiffer, and then there's one that's a little bit longer, a little bit more flexible. This is just what I have. Just make sure you don't cut yourself. I will probably also be using just a normal knife for cutting. Again, just make sure what you're using sharp and be careful. All right, we're going to start with a hind quarter. This would be the back leg. This would be where the first joint is. This is going to be up where the hip is. So when we sawed it in half at the very end of the video, this was right here. You see it kind of moves. There's a ball joint here. So what we're going to try and do is we're going to separate this section here, clean up a lot of this fat off, and then what I'm going to try and do is cut it kind of like a thick, what they call a caveman steak. It's something I had watched the bearded butchers do with a deer, so I'm going to attempt it with a goat. So first thing we're going to do is take the boning knife. We're going to get in here right down to the bone. Kind of a disclaimer, I'm not a butcher, so if you are and you see me doing something, you want to critique me, feel free to. Just, again, this is not what I do for a living. I think I cut a little too high up. There's that ball joint right there. Okay. So there's essentially the hip, and this is the femur. So I'm gonna go ahead and trim off a lot of this fat. I'm not gonna show you a bunch of that right now because it takes a lot of time, but basically I'm just gonna get up under it, and it should peel back as long as your knife is sharp. You don't want to get too much meat, obviously, but it should come right off. what I'll do is I'll have two piles. I'll have a pile where I'm going to put the meat, where I need to debone it, clean it up, and then we'll do something else with it. And then I'll have a scrap pile that we'll dispose of later. I'm pretty sure you can use the fat and make tallow out of it. We're not going to do that this time. We're going to see if we like goat, to see if we want to keep doing this. I did cook the tenderloins the day of when we butchered it. I mean, it tasted like a mixture between venison and beef, in my opinion. I just seasoned it like I would steak, and it turned out okay. All right, so I trimmed off a good bit of the fat. You don't want to trim everything off, but I guess it's preference how much you want to leave on it. Probably could just leave it all on if you really wanted to, but so what I'm going to do, let me get my saw real quick. So I don't have a butcher saw, but I bought a hacksaw that I use just for meat. It seemed to work pretty well last time. So we're going to start about right here and go all the way to the bone. Take the saw. Finish the cut. So this will be one side of it. So you can really make as thick as you want it. I'm gonna try and get two out of this one. Don't make it super, super thick. All right, so we'll go back and we'll clean this bone dust off before we package it. But what it's supposed to look like. See if we can get a second one out of it. And there's the second one. So for the rest of it, we're gonna just debone it. So find the bone. And work your way down. And then we're going to try and just roll this bone out of it. Well, it's not working like I want, so we're just going to go ahead and take that chunk off. I'll try it on a different one. There's a chunk of meat. And then this is, I believe what they call the shank. So a lot of it's just bone anyways. So we're just gonna chop off the rest of the meat and then to get ground up. This is gonna be where the shoulder blade is in the front, which is this right here. So we're gonna try and separate it at the joint, and then we'll first I'm going to clean up all this fat, and then we will try and separate it here. Trying to use one hand so I can keep one hand clean to operate the camera. So let's see. Is that the joint? I was a little too far back. Right there. You see, kind of like the hip socket. There's a ball joint right there. I'm trying to get it to come loose. Oh well, I guess we're gonna have to get hands dirty. All right. So on your shoulder blade, there's going to be a flat side and there's going to be a side. It's going to have kind of like a flat part, and it's going to have a blade in the middle sticking straight up. So we're just going to debone this and grind this up, most likely, probably the whole thing. So I'll try and show you what that looks like. There's the bone. So we're going to go right beside that bone. And follow it. And do the same thing to the other side. So if you can see right there, that's that blade I was talking about. That's the bone. All right. Might try and get a steak out of that. Yeah. We'll clean that up. Make that a steak. So, there's shoulder blade. There's that blade part we talked about. On this side, there's probably not a lot of meat compared to the rest of the animal. There's still a lot here. So I'm just going to take this off and grind it. rule of thumb, if you can see through it, it'll grind. If it's thick and white, it's probably going to be gristly and tough. So we'll trim that stuff out. I don't know if you can see all that color in it. They call that marbling, where it's got the streaks of fat through it. So hopefully this is going to be tasty and juicy. I guess if it's ground meat, you won't really know the difference. Maybe you will, I don't know. We'll find out. I think they call goat mutton. Is that where a man's beard mutton chops came from? Look like a goat. I don't know. My jokes aren't funny. I'm a dad. Comes with the territory. So, anyway, I'm not going to show you all this. This is just tedious work. So, I'll show you what I do on the next piece. There's the blade. So, that'll go on the scrap pile. And then this one, I get a hold of it. We're just going to debone it. I think, unless I see a good chunk of meat that might make a good steak or something. I'm fully aware that parts of the animal's called different things, but to me, you got ground meat and then you got chunks of meat, steak. So let's go down the elbow here, back out here. Chunk of meat. Now, when we actually process this animal, we were trying to be as clean as we could, but it's inevitable sometimes, especially on a homestead. You're going to have maybe dirt sometimes, grass. Clean all that off best you can, water hose and stuff before you put it on ice. But what I'm looking for is there little pieces of like hair or something. I'll trim that stuff off. And then I'll look through it again when I'm trimming everything up before I get ready to package it or grind it or something like that. But I try to be meticulous about making sure all that stuff is removed. I don't sell this stuff. This is just for farm use, family use. So if you see something like, hey, that's not sanitary, well, because I'm on a farm, I don't have the proper setup to do this the way I want to. Like I put it on ice because I don't have a cold room, and it's Florida, so it's not like I can go hang it in a tree at night where it's going to be like in the 30s or 40s all day long. But one day I hope to have a cold room so I can just hang the whole carcass, and it wouldn't look like jello when you're trying to mess with it. It would actually be firm. Like this fat right here would be really dry and crunchy sounding. You can't, right now it's just smooth. So it's difficult to get a hold of sometimes. Real easy to slit and cut yourself. So if you're doing it the way I'm doing it, especially if it's your first time, or even if you've done it for a long time, you get complacent, don't cut yourself. And if you do, rub some dirt in it, wrap it in duct tape, and keep going. Obviously, I'm kidding. If you cut yourself, you want to make sure you stop and get that cleaned up. You don't want to be messing with animal parts and bleeding. There's a piece of that hair I was talking about. it sticks to that fat. It's really difficult to pick off. So I'll just cut a little piece off of it when I do it. That's my preference. I'd rather be overly cautious and it be clean than trying to pick it out and, you know, doing stuff with tweezers or whatever. You get what I'm saying. Just make sure it's clean. Okay, so I'm gonna clean up a little bit more off the bone and then get on to the next piece of meat. So here's a set of ribs. I don't have a bag big enough for this. I know that already. So I'm probably going to have to cut it. I don't know. When I get to that part, I'll explain it a little better. But I'll probably have to trim this up and make it smaller pieces for me to fit it in a bag or something. If you have a tube of vacuum seal that it's wide enough that you can cut it to length, that'd probably be the best bet. Or if you had like butcher's paper that you can wrap it in, as long as you're gonna eat it relatively quick, it's not gonna last forever in butcher paper. But, so we're gonna trim off this little bit here, which is, this would have been where the flank was attached to. So try and trim up some of that fat later before we grind it. So there's a membrane here. It gets super slick. You need to peel this off. So we will see if we can get that on camera. So I use paper towels, something that you can grip with. So see if we can get a corner to come up somewhere. Looks like a spot right there. So take this, grab. You could definitely wait if you wanted to until you're at the point of getting ready to cook it. It's just one more step that you have to prepare for. So I like to just go ahead and get it off now if I can. If not, man, it's being difficult. Anyways, you get the gist of it. So I'm gonna be here a minute. So I found out I was grabbing too deep. I was trying to pull everything off. So right here, if you grab just that top layer, it was coming off a lot easier. So I got the majority of it pulled off on one side. Once it starts coming off, it is pretty easy. You definitely want some fat when you're doing the grinding part, unless you're gonna add some kind of fat to it. So we're gonna trim off some of this. We're gonna leave a lot of meat on it because we want them to be meaty ribs. So I'm just gonna go through and trim off the excess stuff here. Has anybody who's watching this video ever processed a goat before? If so, what do you do that you think is something that, if you could tell yourself early on what you would do, like, hey, this is a game changer, doing it this way versus this way? That helped me out a little bit. Or if you eat goat, what is your favorite recipe? Throw some comments in there. Let me know how you eat it. Do you grill it? Do you stew it? I know a lot of places like doing curry and rice. That'd probably be one of the first things we try. You probably could just trim off the fat and leave it as is if you just want really meaty ribs. But this is the way I'm gonna try it my first go around. I wonder what goat sausage tastes like. So I am going to take it at this rib. That is my choice. If it doesn't fit in the bag, I'll probably trim it off a little bit more rectangular. But for now, this is going to go back in the cooler, and then we'll work on something else. So I think this was, it's kind of stiff. This is the flank. So this would be like your pork belly or whatnot. Beef flank, I think. Anyways, it's the meat section below the ribs that connects to the back legs. So that lower belly portion. So we're just gonna grind this up. So I'm gonna trim off a good amount of fat, not all the fat. See, again, if this was a hanging animal, it'd be one big sheet and you could do what you want with it. Because I threw it in a cooler, instead of it being like Jello, this one decided to harden up a little bit. So the amount of fat I'm getting off of it, I wonder if maybe we should try and make tallow. If we do, we'll let you know. Now, when you're hunting, and I guess your choice of how you harvest your animal, there's what they call a bloodshot. So it's where the entrance and exit wound is. It basically splatters everything and it'll be like a dark red. You want to trim as much of that out as you can. You have a risk of getting bone fragment, maybe bullet fragment. You don't want to, it just looks yucky. I'm sure there's other reasons why, but I know when I hunt, we always cut it out. So I assume the rest would go for all animals. So you get the gist of it. I'm just cutting off big chunks of fat. I'm gonna leave some of it, and then all we're gonna do is, so like if this was gonna be my finished piece, got some fat in there. That's in between it though. So we're just gonna cube it up. Just big enough that it'll fit in my grinder. So this piece of flank, you can see that the layer of, I guess, fat or whatever. You can't really see through it. So I'm gonna take the fillet knife and attempt to run it through it. Did you decide to come out here?
I did.
Told everybody they wouldn't hear from you. You were busy.
No, well, I come to say hello. Hello, people. How's it going?
It's going.
Do you need anything?
I don't think so.
Have the goats been screaming like that, or they just saw me, so they're screaming?
I couldn't tell you. All right, so this is the loin. I guess it's called the back strap on the deer. It's called a loin on everything else. So, got some pieces of hair. Get it out. Okay, so you could do a couple things with this. If it was bigger, you could make like boneless pork chops type things. I guess you call them steaks here. But for ease of fitting in a vacuum seal bag, I cut it in half and it's easier to work with. So pretty much this was taken straight off the back next to the spine. So you're pretty much done with it at this point, except for trimming it up. So this side looks pretty good. So I'm just gonna trim off the big, thick, fat pieces. Now this piece here on the top, on a deer we'd call it silver skin. I don't know if goat really has silver skin or not. I haven't seen a whole lot so far. So I'm going to attempt to take this off without completely ruining it. So I'm going to take a fillet knife. You're going to go down and then just fillet it. And if there's anything left over, this stuff can just get ground up. So you could make tiny little steaks like that if you wanted to. I'm probably just going to leave it as is. That gives me better options later. So if I decide that I want to cube it up and fry it, I can. If I decide I want to cut it up into little steaks, I can do that. If I want to put the whole thing on a smoker, I can do that. So it's not super hard. Just try and trim as much of this fat silver skin stuff off. But yeah, that's all you do on that one. That's gonna be the one of the tastier meats. You can look at that, it's marbled as well. This is gonna be interesting. Kind of excited. I would say we would try goat tonight, but Amy's doing a garlic shrimp pasta something, so I like that a lot, so we're gonna wait. All right, the last section I'm gonna show you is the neck bone. So this would be the back, and then there's the neck. I'll trim off, well, I think I'm going to trim off some of this stuff that's dirty on the end. I know some people do different things, maybe not with goat specifically, but you could just cut the neck bone like right here, and you can put the whole thing in a pot of stew or something, boil it down, meat comes off. I'm just going to debone it and use it for ground meat. I don't typically mess with the neck too much on deer. When I'm processing it and when I'm skinning and gutting, I'll try and take a large chunk off the neck while it's hanging. So this is going to be a little new. So that looks like maybe tendons or something. It was running down the neck. So we'll make sure that we cut those pieces out. I'm sure it's not very tasty. They're yellow, so they kind of stand out. It goes all the way up to this section of the neck. Maybe Amy can find some music to go with this, so we're not just listening to me breathe. Rather difficult. So I don't know if you can see it from there, but it's bumpy, like part of the spine or something, but it's on the side. So I don't know. It's making it difficult. So you're gonna find the bone and then just follow that bone. I almost feel like a Brazilian barbecue place, you know, just bring the big skewer over and just cut it right off onto your plate. Trying to get around all these bones and stuff. This is a pain. Everywhere I want to stick, there's bone. I can't really. See, I just cut through some type of bone or vessel right there. I really don't want all that in my meat. So I guess it's just basically how long are you willing to work at it to get the meat off? Because I mean, that looks like a big chunk of meat right there, but I'm already at bone. So like, how do I really want to cut between every little vertebrae and get it out? I don't. So we're gonna call it done, and the coyotes will be happy tonight. So that's pretty much how I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do the other half of everything pretty much the same way I did it just now, and then we will trim it up. We will get ready to vacuum seal a lot of it. We're gonna do pieces that are gonna be about 1 inch cubed, which we call fry meat. We just like to marinate it, flour it, and deep fry it. We'll probably treat it a lot like deer. I'll try and get as many steaks as I can out of it, do some more of the Caveman steaks, ribs, and then everything else that's left over, we'll just grind it. So, depending on how much time I got today, I might do that now on this video, or I might have to come back tomorrow to finish it up. But everything that's done so far, it's going to be put in the refrigerator, which is that black one right there, and we will come back and either finish it today, depending on what time it is. It's already getting later, or I will do it tomorrow. Started getting cold, so I had to go to jacket. So I finished up the rest of the meat. Now we're just gonna separate what we're gonna package as bigger chunks of meat, whether it be our loin or pieces of the hind quarter that we're gonna use for like the Caveman steaks, or I decided on the last one, instead of doing the bigger pieces of Caveman steaks, I separated it by muscle group. And so I just have chunks of meat that I'll show you that I'll just vacuum seal those separately, so we can just throw one in the crock pot or in the oven or something like that. So it's not an entire ham with the bone in it, but it'll be smaller pieces of meat. And then we're gonna grind up what's left and put that in packaging. I may or may not show that on the video. It's just grinding meat and put it in packaging. So that's what we're doing next. So there's a piece of what was the back ham, and this was another piece of it, and that was another piece of it there, and then this was the front shoulder, so that come off the shoulder blade. I'm not sure if that's what they call a blade steak or not, but that's what I have. This is a piece of the loin, and that was the other smaller piece of it after I trimmed it. When I originally cut the loin off, I cut too high, so these pieces actually came off of the back hind quarter too. So since they were kind of attached at the loin and the leg, it would have been like, I guess, like that. I just went ahead and saved those to have like steaks or something out of them. And then the rest of this over here, but you can't see because my camera's stationary. This stuff's gonna be chopped up into smaller pieces. So I'm gonna go ahead and put these in one bowl since these are ready to be packaged. And then I'm going to get the other bowl here in a second. So when I started the video, this is the meat that I'd had chopped up for you there. So well, that's it. We'll vacuum seal the bigger pieces and label those. We will grind up the pieces that we were just working on, and we will package that and label it. And now it's time to clean up. I've made a mess. So until next time. Well, you know, keep on the sunny side.